Hi, everybody. I'm Norman. It's good to be here. I don't know if anybody saw or talked about the 60 Minutes on Sunday night. The Robin Hood Foundation, as somebody who was involved early on with Robin, I was really moved by Paul Jones and that piece, and it's kind of nice to be associated with Robin Hood at this event. And I've also, through Uncommon Schools and Relay, had the opportunity to work with, I don't know, a dozen graduates of Columbia Business School who've done tremendous work at every level of our organizations, and it's really cool to be with folks from Columbia Business School. City of Newark. After working at Robin Hood, I got really interested in education as the up escalator for low-income students. And New Jersey passed a charter law, I think in January of 1996, and it felt like an open invitation to people like me to take the magic of the small mission-driven private schools that I met and saw in New York and make them work in the public sector. And I started a charter school called North Star Academy. And then on the basis of that work, if you probably made a list of, in the early, say 2000, 2001, of the 100 highest performing schools in the United States serving low-income students, these are non-selective, they were almost all charter schools, and the philanthropic and policy sector said to those people who had started small schools like North Star, be fruitful and multiply, make more schools. And instead of just creating a North Star charter organization, I found a bunch of terrific people who were doing this work, particularly in Boston. And we formed together, Dr. King was one of them, and made Uncommon Schools into a charter school organization that next fall, will have 10,000 students in 38 schools in Brooklyn, upstate New York, Newark, and Boston. And that's been fun. And one day I was sitting around with this gentleman, David Levin, who's the founder of KIPP. And KIPP is probably across the country 3 or 4 times the size of Uncommon Schools. And we were talking about how hard it is to find and prepare and train teachers for our growing networks of schools, and also about the limitations of our schools to get to serve the vast majority of kids, and thought, what could we do differently? And came up with this idea while we were having beer at this restaurant, Union Square, that we would start to develop teachers. And we did that because of this particular problem. We felt like we were looking for a needle in a haystack, and if the 3.3 million teachers in this country are needles in a haystack, we are all in trouble. Essentially, if teachers are born, then we're never going to be able to accomplish what we need to accomplish for the 50 million kids across the country. And so we believe that teachers can be developed and made, and sort of set out to do that. We partnered with Achievement First as well. And then we found ourselves looking for a home to do this, a place where we could make this happen. And we talked to about 10 different institutions of higher education. And this gentleman, David Steiner, was at the time and is now the dean of the School of Education at Hunter College. And he embraced us with open arms and helped us create what we called then Teacher U at Hunter College. And after a couple years of doing that work and bringing about 350 teachers into the profession in New York City and charter public schools, we founded Relay Graduate School of Education. And we called it Relay for this reason. It's not just one teacher that's going to make a difference in the lives of our students. It is a relay of great teachers. So if you take an average student in the 50th percentile, an average student, and you give that child a relay of, the research says, somewhere between 3 and 5, call it 4 teachers in a row, top decile teachers, that student is going to the 90th percentile. And conversely, as happens too often in our urban schools and rural schools, if you give that student 4 low-performing teachers in a row, ineffective teachers in a row, the child can kiss the dream of going to college goodbye. So relay Graduate School of Education. So we petitioned the state of New York for permission to be an independent institution of higher education in New York. And then we went to the Middle States Commission of Higher Education and became an accredited institution. And we are developing a program in New Jersey and also this fall in Louisiana. Just to clarify here, we are training and developing people who are essentially early on working as full-time teachers while they are learning the profession. This is the paradigm that we're working in. It is probably not the ideal paradigm, but it is one that we feel like we can function in given the economics and the situation, the need that we have. We're growing. Last year we were 440 teachers, this year about 600, and next year across the 3 geographies, mostly in New York, a little bit more than 800. And we're increasingly moving from having worked with elementary and middle school teachers to teachers in high school, and increasingly working with STEM teachers. And although we initially began working with charter school teachers, our aspiration is to work with district public school teachers, and next year it'll be about half and half in the cohort coming in. So what are some of the things that we're doing differently? Hello. Click no. I love research. I love theory. I was moved by the previous speaker. Sparked a ton of intellectual curiosity, and we need great liberal arts education. We need great teaching of theory. We need to ground the work that we do in research, without question. But the sad truth is that the vast majority of the 165,000 teachers who will enter the profession for the first time this coming year will find themselves terribly unprepared to stand in front of a classroom and teach. And they will struggle with the very basic teacher moves around how to set up their classroom and how to manage their classroom. So at the first level, what we're trying to do is teach in our program very concrete techniques and strategies that have been enumerated in resources, many of which, not all of which, have grown out of some of the schools and organizations that we've set forth. Most famously, Doug Lemov put down 49 of these techniques and strategies in a resource called Teach Like a Champion. And increasingly, we're coming to believe that practicing these techniques and strategies, rehearsing them in advance of teaching kids, works well. I have an example of one such technique, and I want to show this video.
How can we use the word compromise to think about what happened in this part of the story? Let's see what happens after 1.4 seconds.
Well, how can we use the word compromise to think about what happened in this part of the story?
One hand. That's quite possibly the same hand that was raised last time there was a question. The same hand that was raised almost every time there's a question. In fact, it's the same hand that was up before the question was even asked. Calling on this student is not a recipe for getting the best answer, or for getting more kids to participate and engage. So that's the challenge. How does Ms. Vargas overcome it? Here she uses narrated wait time.
It's an example of an online module.
Many teachers wait a few strategic seconds between asking a question and calling on a student for the answer. That's wait time. It's often silent, but teachers whose goal is to close the achievement gap often narrate their wait time. That's a crucial distinction. They use this narration to shape what students do and think about during the time they've been given. We've been watching Ms. Vargas at North Star Academy. Let's play the clip out and see how long she waits and how she narrates.
Well, how can we use the word compromise to think about what happened in this part of the story? 1, 2, 3 people are thinking. More? Ooh, almost half the class is thinking. Chinidum.
I see 13 hands. That's 13 times the engagement. So even if you only take one answer, everyone's done the thinking. There's an irony to the wait. The students are learning faster when Miss Vargas slows down. She gives up 15 seconds, but ultimately she's coming out ahead. Better student engagement, better pacing, stronger cognition. In the end, she'll save time by only having to ask the question once. First up is a short reading about the wait time technique. Be sure to reference the guiding questions at the top of the reading.
Okay. So just gives you an idea. About 40% of our program is online and includes a lot of the direct instruction and guided practice like what you just saw here, going through very specific techniques and strategies before people gather for in-person sessions. It includes a video library, a couple thousand clips that graduate students can access to see strategies like that playing out in a classroom. Another difference of our program is that Valerie said, my background isn't in education. There are tremendous researchers who have a lot to teach in the academy, but what teachers need in terms of developing their practical techniques and strategies is people who have been great teachers, leaders in schools, especially working with low-income kids, teaching them. And so here's an example of one of our professors, Julie Jackson, who taught at the school and led the school that you just saw a clip of. A lot of watching and analyzing videotape, a lot of opportunities to practice, online learning, video library, and use of data to drive instruction. The first year of the program in particular, people are just learning how to track student achievement data, and in the second year, demonstrating that their students are making progress. So those are differentiating characteristics. A little bit more about our program, right? There's 5 elements that we like to think about. The first is very much related to the presentation that we just heard. Begin with the self, right? Great teachers need to learn to look in the mirror at their own practice and their own orientation toward the work that they're going to do, rather than looking through the magnifying glass at the problems and issues and tics and idiosyncrasies of their students. If they go and do that, they develop a belief that all students, all children can learn at the highest level, and that they, as the teachers, are responsible for making it happen in the classroom. They're reflective, and they begin then to start to work with, they learn about other people, they learn how to be culturally responsive, and they develop a practice of working with parents and the community. They also recognize that at every instance, a teacher is always teaching essentially 2 objectives. One might be how to convert fractions into decimals into percents, but another is zest and grit and love and social intelligence. And so teaching character is a huge part of the program. Second, classroom culture, how to manage a classroom, classroom procedures, and building a joyful classroom in which children are invested. Third, teaching cycle, essentially rigorous planning, clear, engaging delivery, and always checking for understanding. I was in Charlotte, North Carolina yesterday. The state of North Carolina, I think last year, produced 1 physics teacher for the entire state. We have a need not only to get teachers strong at general pedagogy, some of the things that I've just been talking about, but also at the teaching of the content. And so getting strong teachers to be able to teach content knowledge. The Common Core calls us forth to think about all teachers as literacy teachers, that reading and writing become fundamental skills that all students need to develop. The bar has been raised, and it is not sufficient anymore to have teachers manage classrooms and not be able to teach the particular content. So this becomes a big part of our program as well as ensuring always we can differentiate the instruction for all students in the classroom. It's on literacy. And then last, pointing all of these particular elements toward student growth and achievement. So at the end of our program, Kevin, a teacher in the Bronx, is being able to track student achievement data, is demonstrating proficiency on skills on a rubric, is doing a lot of self-reflection, and has a portfolio of videos demonstrating that he has gained these particular skills. All the students in our program will submit a master's defense before they finish the program at the end of 2 years. About 80% of the people who start the program finish. 98% of those people who get to the end of the program are able to finish the master's defense, demonstrating either at least a year's worth of growth in a year, or demonstrating 70–75% standards mastery when they're teaching in non-tested grades and subjects. So, for example, in elementary reading, on average, the people in our program over time are showing between 1.2 and about 1.3 years of growth in reading. There are a lot of challenges and opportunities not only for Relay, but for all of us in the work of developing the next generation of teachers. 70% of the people who come to the profession major in education as undergraduates. They are often, not always, they're often but not always among the weakest students in their institutions. There was a professor at the University of Missouri, an economist, who just looked at this, and across, I think, major research universities in the Midwest, those people who are majoring in biology and math and some of the toughest subjects and were at danger of not being able to graduate transferred into the education department, sadly, and those who were majoring in education and did not feel intellectually challenged were transferring into other fields and disciplines. We need collectively to be building pipelines of new teachers to come into the profession. Secondly, we need to develop training along the lines of what I've described, but this isn't for everyone, but training that is grounded in practice, where people have a chance to get the practice before they're working with students at scale. We need to think about how collectively we on-ramp people into the profession. So one of the things that we do to the good-hearted souls that are ready to give their lives to teaching is we put them in some of the most difficult circumstances. We orphan them in schools without the proper observation and support. We give them the same number of students as more senior folks in the school, and we give them among the most challenging students in the field. This is not the way to cause people to last in the profession and to be happy about their work, and should be no surprise to us that 50% of the people who begin teaching will leave within the first 5 years. And the most frequent number of years of experience of people in teaching right now in the United States used to be 14, but is 1. We've got a lot of work to do. And then as a field, we have a lot of different people operating on the same young teachers, and there is a fair amount of cognitive dissonance for these folks. You have wonderful organizations like Teach for America and the New York City Teaching Fellows bringing people into the profession. You have schools, you have graduate programs. Sometimes the principal of the school and the general direction of the district are not aligned, and the teachers may be getting 4 different frameworks and rubrics, and the language, although it might be similar, is really tough for folks. So I think we have a lot of work to do in terms of aligning the adults in the field coming together to provide a clearer and better path for people coming into the profession. I feel like those are some of the big challenges and opportunities for the field. It is a privilege for me and for Relay to get to do this work, and I see a lot of friends and colleagues in the room, and I'm thrilled to be able to have a conversation about whatever is on your mind in relation to what I spoke or other things that you're thinking about here. Questions, comments?
Hi, I'm Jamina. I'm with Teach for America. Jamina Bernard with Teach for America. So, friend to friend, what do you think it's going to take for organizations like ours and others that you mentioned to actually sort of do that hard work to bring all of our rubrics and all of our inputs and all of our processes together, since we're so mission aligned and we're clearly already working together? But just curious what you think we as a field of educators and people who are supporting teachers coming into this movement, what could we do better together?
Hi, Jamina. Gosh, I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot. When I go around and look at, I've been in so many classrooms over the past 20 years and a lot lately. And when I go into classrooms and kind of look at how people are developing, if I'm being entirely honest, it's not the teacher prep program that we're running. It's not Teach for America, where you play a really big role. It is the speed and quality of the observation and feedback loop, instructional leader to teacher. And that if we're, again, being honest about what's out there, 3.3 million teachers across the country are closing the door to their classrooms, and they are feeling incredibly lonely and vulnerable. I think Valerie described the difficulty of the task really well. And the principals are building managers who are in their offices dealing with sort of running the complex set of problems that are facing the school, and are ill-equipped to lead instruction and are hidebound by the regulations to go into those classrooms 3 times during the year, where they do a set observation and give very low quality feedback. The teacher has lots of advance notice, and he or she develops his or her best practice and may even entice the students into being more mellow on that particular day. And the principals, by and large, are signing off on 99.9% of the teachers. They get tenure after 3 years, and then they go into classrooms once a year. So the number one thing I think that it's going to take to change that is to create a generation of instructional leaders who are peripatetic in their schools, who are going into classrooms all day long. That is their core responsibility, and who are giving teachers hopeful, helpful, concrete feedback that will cause them to feel successful and supported over time, and will wield the evaluation systems that we're developing in the long run, not as a cudgel to destroy their spirit, but rather as a vehicle to help them identify where they need to get better and improve. And that in that particular framework and scenario, organizations like yours and ours, I think, need to start to align with those schools and principals and ensure that we're preparing teachers that fit into the frameworks and needs of those schools, and that we're putting groups of teachers in those particular schools together, and that we are task analyzing what teachers need to do early in their careers, and are beginning with things like tutoring, small group instruction, after-school instruction, 1 period a day, 2 periods a day, before we start throwing people into the deep end of the pool. And there are huge economic implications to what I've just described, but my hunch is that if we get together around the table, that we can build a virtuous cycle where people are staying longer, and that not only the emotional but financial costs of the turnover will redound. We'll be able to fix that much better.
You mentioned the speed and quality of the observation feedback loop. To what extent is Relay, or do you have any partners working with the school leaders and principals so that they can really reinforce the practices through those observations and feedback loops?
Yeah. So I think kind of as a result of the insight that I just described, and partly in talking with the New York City public schools in particular, but then people in a wide range of places, we decided this summer to embark upon 2 projects. One is a sitting principals academy. So essentially there'll be 120 principals, half charter, half district, from around the country who will come to us. They have not really been handpicked by us, but really by their districts, and they'll be coming to us with their principal managers. And we're hoping to develop the observation, feedback loop, school culture, data-driven instruction. Some of the skills and techniques that are laid out by Paul Bambrick in Leverage Leadership, which does a really strong job of this. And they'll come for the summer, and then we'll be with them for about 4 weekends during the year. And then in addition, we're working to develop a aspiring leaders program. New York City Public Schools, I think, is sending 25, Cluster 4 is sending, I think, 25 to 30 aspiring leaders. They are mostly, Jamina, TFA alums who I think the district is trying to keep, and we're hoping to work with those, and then build a master's of instructional school leadership so that we can start to fill out some of these elements. And then hopefully those principals will be stronger partners with respect to the teacher development.
Hi, Kirsten Bush-Johnson, New York City DOE. In our city's pilot evaluation work that we've been running over the last few years, one of the things we've been emphasizing is increasing the frequency of observations and the timeliness of feedback that our school leaders are delivering to our teachers as a lever to foster improvements in teacher practice. And we found that when we create conditions that give our school leaders more flexibility as to when the observations are conducted, how the feedback is delivered, in person, email, in the hallway, etc., that our teachers in the pilot are saying they're more satisfied because they're getting the feedback faster. Do you have a perspective, though, from your work on the right balance of touch points in terms of face-to-face dialogue between teachers and school leaders versus feedback given to teachers in other ways? And are you seeing any correlation between the rate at which teachers improve their practice and the nature of the interaction that they're having with school leaders?
I mean, partly this is a function of the size of the school and the depth of the team that can provide that kind of feedback. But ideally, you want the instructional leader to go into every teacher's classroom every day. It could be for as little as 5 minutes, and the strong instructional leader will know how to triage those observations, and the feedback needs to be, in the first instance, as simple as glows and grows. Like, here's one thing that I saw in your classroom that's great, you should feel good, rock on, and here's the thing that you're working on. Then sort of systematically getting to teachers every couple of weeks and doing more thorough observation sessions, and then meeting them face to face and giving them feedback. Sometimes just describing what's happened in the classroom, sometimes using videotape, but the key moment here is then, and this is like what really doesn't happen enough, is the principle. Often this takes place and nobody is tracking that conversation. And if you're managing 20 or 30 teachers in the school, it all gets lost. And there's so many things that you could talk about. New teachers, oh my God, there's like 40 things in the classroom that could be fixed, that could be addressed. So it's important that the skilled instructional leader finds the one or two highest level elements, gives that particular feedback while also giving the teacher some measure of support and confidence, and then ensures that he or she comes back the next 2 weeks, has the observation tracker and says, this is what we talked about last time, this is what I noticed, you knew that I was coming to observe you on this particular element, and that feels to me the best possible rhythm. Valerie.
Like, how long are you going to wait? My question is about who are the types of people that come into your program? And the reason why I ask this question is because it's a different kind of master's degree. And I wonder if it's more teachers who feel that they need to improve. And we know that there's gender and racial differences in people who feel that they need to improve, rather than teachers who don't actually know that they need to improve their teaching. So I'm wondering if who are the kinds of people that are going into your program, and do they differ from other kinds of classes?
It's an interesting question. I think we're not that different than other provisional certification programs, alternative certification programs, what they call in New York State transitional B certification programs, in that these are people who have been identified for jobs and they are required by law to get certified over the course of, I think they're allowed 3 years, but most programs are 2 years. And in New York State, they're not only required by law to be certified, but that means they are required to get a master's degree. I am not certain that it's the right thing to do when you're dropping teachers in the deep end of the pool to have them enrolled in a master's degree program at the same time. This is what I mean when I say it may not be the ideal paradigm. It's probably better than some of the other paradigms that we have out there. But if we were going to, in the spirit of what I described before, reimagine the way we on-ramp people into the profession, I would hope that we would begin creating field experiences for prospective teachers when they're freshmen in college, and that people have an opportunity to start to interact with schools so that by the time they graduate from college, they know, I love working in schools, I love working with kids, I'm pretty good at it, these folks want to hire me, I've got some training, I'm on my pathway to the credentialing. So that would be like one thought about how one might start, and my forecast is that we would get better folks coming into the profession, and that the training in rhythm with the early teaching would make more sense. We're not there yet. The sort of second part of your question, what comes to my mind is not the 165,000 new people entering the profession, but the 3.3 million teachers across the country. And my God, we spend so much time talking about teacher preparation. They get prepared, they get certified, they're in, and then what the heck are we doing with them for their whole careers? Is it any wonder why people are leaving if we're not giving them an opportunity to grow and develop? I described one element of it in terms of the principal's role, but I think as a as a field, we have a responsibility to kind of take some of the techniques and strategies that I've described and that my colleagues have worked on and build that out much larger and give people a sense that over the course of your 5 years or 10 years or 20 years in the field, here's your growth trajectory. Here are the things to get good at in terms of checking for understanding and cold calling and differentiating instruction and teaching trigonometry and so forth. And that when we create some kind of badge system or some kind of sort of sense of where you're headed, I think that we will be inviting the vast majority of teachers to express their vulnerability and work toward getting better. I don't know of anybody who's teaching who thinks that they've got it perfect. I think everybody really in their heart wants to know how to get good at it and wants to be successful. And I just meet a lot of people who I think are crushed by the challenges of the work. In the back, yeah.
So Norm, given that so much of what you're talking about that we're trying to have principals do also relates to how we as managers manage our own staff, I was wondering if you'd be willing to just share a personal story about what you've been learning that we would want teachers to do that you may have tried doing yourself as a manager of your own people, and how that's worked.
Oh my gosh. Elizabeth Stock, my friend, asked me a challenging question here. So working with Hunter College, I met a professor there, Kate Garnett, who ran their special education department. And she introduced me to an education theorist named Chaim Genot, who's Israeli. And he had this fascinating phrase that Dave Levin has been using ever since, called "you make the weather." So essentially, the way I've been thinking about it is that teachers make the weather in their classroom and their schools. That the classroom is a reflection of the teacher's mood and personality, and that when teachers are feeling incredibly upset and disappointed and unloving, that comes across to the students, and that students need to feel the positive energy and the love and the joy and the great weather. And it's sad to me how many teachers, when they feel unsuccessful at making the weather in their classroom, turn that in a very bad way on blaming their students, their parents, and the community. And so I really take seriously the work that Paul Tuff describes in How Children Succeed and the teaching of character. And I think it is our responsibility as teachers and educators to make positive weather in our classrooms and to teach love and kindness and grit and so on. And so to get to your question, I'm okay. Like I really try hard to be positive with everybody I work with all the time. But it is possible that from time to time I exhibit what people are now calling microaggressions. Or I get upset with how something is going and I show it. And my reflection is that it is my responsibility when working with other people to learn the same lessons that we're asking our teachers and leaders to follow in making really positive weather for the people around us.
Thank you.
Look, this just turned into a therapy session. Is there any lunch? Thank you very much.